Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
بحث الرئيس محمود عباس خلال اتصال هاتفي اليوم مع السيد خالد مشعل.
During a telephone conversation with the leader of Hamas's political office, Khalid Mish'al, President Mahmoud Abbas discussed the results of the legislative elections and the makeup of a new Palestinian government over the coming days. Today, President Mahmoud Abbas received a phone call from U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. The Palestinian presidential spokesman, Nabil Abu-Daina, said that Rice congratulated Abbas on the success of the elections and encouraged him for giving the Palestinians this opportunity to exercise their right to vote. Rice confirmed that the American administration would continue to support Abbas, who was voted in by the Palestinian people, and would support his politics. Rice listened to Abbas's point of view on how he sees the developments taking place, and they agreed to keep in touch in the coming stages. Meanwhile, Arab, foreign, and local observers agreed that the Palestinian legislative elections were highly successful. Their statements made it clear that the Palestinians confirmed they are a civilized people and are distinguished by their awareness and ability to give in all circumstances and situations. In addition, the observers confirmed that the Palestinian people deserve an independent democratic state that lives in peace with all the nations in the region. A parade in the Sheikh Radwan district was held celebrating Hamas's victory in the legislative elections. The results were announced by the elections committee. Today, the Prime Minister, Ahmed Qorei, announced that he handed his resignation to President Mahmoud Abbas so that a new Prime Minister could be chosen for the new government. In statements made to the press, Qorei said that it is up to Hamas to form the new government since it has won the majority of the seats in the Legislative Council. Regarding reactions to Hamas's victory in the elections, the American President George Bush announced today that Hamas must end its message to destroy Israel. During a press conference at the White House, Bush said that the United States does not support political parties that want to destroy our ally Israel. Meanwhile, the Austrian Chancellor Wolfgang Schüssel, whose country is heading to the European Union's meeting in Vienna, announced that the EU will join the new Palestinian government, which will be made up of the Islamic movement Hamas, according to its policy towards the peace process. In a conversation with Austria's public broadcasting station, ORF, Schüssel said that we will judge any government or Palestinian parliament based on their support and contribution to the peace process and its willingness to recognize the State of Israel and acceptance of the idea of a two-state solution that will eventually lead to the recognition of a Palestinian state. The French Foreign Minister Philippe Douste-Blazy considered the Palestinian elections as a democratic victory and called for all Palestinian forces to participate in the political process and to end violence. Meanwhile, the American State Department announced today that its Middle East Quartet Committee will meet this coming Monday in London regarding the Palestinian election results. The spokesman for the committee, Sean McCormick, said that the U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice will participate in this meeting with her counterparts in the European Troika, in addition to Russia and China, and will take place on the sidelines of a donors' conference for Afghanistan. President Mahmoud Abbas will be giving an important speech to the Palestinian people tonight regarding the end of the legislative elections. At a press conference this afternoon, the presidential spokesman, Nabil Abu-Daina, said that the president will give his speech after he receives the official results for the legislative elections.
في إطار منظمة التحرير الفلسطينية الممثل الشرعي والوحيد. We will work on implementing and improving the organization's role inside and out, considering it is the political reference that protects the national program and Palestinian independence, as well as the decisions made by national councils, including all the agreements and documents we have signed and by which we abide. Together we will fulfill the dream, for which many have lost their lives trying to achieve, of a free and independent Palestinian state, democratic and prosperous, on the basis of national unity and democracy, characterized by political diversity and equality between its citizens, ensuring individual freedom and equality between man and woman, as stressed by our Declaration of Independence.
ومزدهرة على قاعدة التمسك بوحدتنا الوطنية وبالديمقراطية والتعددية السياسية وبالمساواة بين مواطنيها وضمان حرياتهم الشخصية والمساواة بين المرأة والرجل كما أكد عليه إعلان الاستقلال. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Peace be upon you.
ونتحول إلى الأراضي الفلسطينية التي شهدت زلزالا سياسيا تمثل بحصول حركة حماس على.
We now turn to the Palestinian territories, which has witnessed a political landslide in which the Hamas movement gained 76 seats and Fatah 43 seats in the Palestinian elections. Hamas considered this a victory for the resistance and an improvement and a change. Sami Abu Zuhri, spokesperson for Hamas, said that the movement plans to cooperate with the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to a large degree after their success in the legislative elections. He maintained that internally, the subject of forming a government has been a matter of discussion for the movement. Abu Zuhri's statements come after hundreds of Hamas supporters headed to the legislative elections headquarters in Ramallah, where they took down the Palestinian flag and raised the movement's own flag over the building. About 100 supporters gathered at the entrance of the Palestinian parliament in an organized celebration of the movement's success in the legislative elections. Before entering, a small group broke the glass windows of the building, which led the Palestinian police to interfere and escort them out. Police also fired shots in the air to break up a clash between Hamas and Fatah supporters. 2 people sustained injuries.
This is how Hamas's victory took place, with many implications not only within the region, but on the international level. Hamas's supporters roamed the streets of Gaza in celebration, highlighting that the only choice facing the world is to accept this outcome, which was born out of a democratic process. As Nabil Abordena reiterated in his statement, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas recognizes the legitimacy of the election and calls on all to respect the results.
السيد الرئيس أن يؤكد على أن الانتخابات التي جرت بنزاهة.
The President wishes to stress that these free and transparent election results must be respected by all, and we ask all sides to behave responsibly, to uphold the law and to accept people's will as expressed by the ballot boxes.
كما عبر عنها من خلال صناديق الاقتراع.
Prime Minister Ahmed Qorei accepted the reality of the situation, but tendered his resignation today, opening up the stage for Hamas to form a new government. Senior Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh called on the American administration to respect the decision of the Palestinian people. He also announced that negotiations with Mahmoud Abbas will be conducted soon to determine the appropriate way to form the new government.
The Hamas movement has become an integral part of the Legislative Council. Yes, Hamas has acquired the majority seats in the council, which is considered the highest authority in the Palestinian political system. No doubt this is all true, but it is too soon to say that Hamas has become a government authority. I still wish to stress that political participation will involve all the Palestinian people.
The Palestinian public, which has been accepting congratulations for this outcome, views the stalled peace process and the corruption in the Palestinian Authority as some of the reasons for Fatah's defeat.
Fatah has some honest people, but lately it has been overshadowed by opportunists. And this is the reason why the opposition, especially Hamas, has increasingly gained public support.
The victory scored by Hamas may lead to cooperation and collaboration among the different Palestinian factions, including Fatah, which until now has refrained from participating in any government formed by Hamas. Fatah stated that it will let Hamas take on the responsibility of governing, and that Fatah, which for a long time has made all the decisions affecting the future of the Palestinian people, will now become the main opposition party in the Legislative Council. Sources close to Abbas say that he supports the position of Fatah to not participate in any government led by Hamas. However, the final word will be made by the executive committee of the organization.
أهلا بكم مجددا. نتائج الانتخابات الفلسطينية ستكون هي
The results of the Palestinian elections is our top story. After the Palestinian Election Committee announced that the Hamas movement won 76 legislative council seats, the movement spokesman, Sami Abu Zuhri, announced that the victory of the movement is a victory to the Palestinian resistance and their reform program. Abu Zuhri told Al Alam television that Hamas will work with other Palestinian factions in order to reach a mutual political program.
Although all signs indicated that the Reform and Change Party of the Hamas movement would win a high number of seats in the Palestinian Legislative Council, the movement refrained from making any comments before the Elections Committee released the official results of the vote. The movement also refrained from holding any celebrations in Gaza streets. Rather, Hamas released a short statement expressing its gratitude to the Palestinian people and factions who, according to the statement, have delivered a fatal blow to the enemies that used political pressure and blackmail to stop their people's desires.
The Hamas movement winning more than 75 seats out of the 132 legislative council seats is a victory to the resistance and the Reform and Change program. This is also a reassurance that the late martyr, Ahmad Yassin, did not die in vain. We will use this victory to serve the interests of the Palestinian people, and we will try to work with all Palestinian factions in order to reach a mutual political program that unifies Palestinian efforts so we can serve our Palestinian people and plight.
The results of the second Palestinian legislative elections shocked many people. Some observers confirm that the landslide victory even surprised the Hamas movement itself. Meanwhile, the ruling Fatah movement showed courage in accepting defeat, but attributed the reasons to leadership and internal problems.
The leadership of the Fatah movement is totally responsible for this amazing decrease in popularity. This is a real political earthquake by all standards. People were surprised and shocked by the results, including the Fatah movement.
Despite Fatah's surprise by the result, they congratulated their brothers in Hamas for their victory and expressed their pride in this Palestinian democracy.
We accept the results in a democratic spirit, and God willing, they will not disappoint the citizens. They are our brothers, and we hope that they can serve the Palestinian citizen. They say that Palestinian areas are lawless, but this shows that democracy prevails here. We also forward plans aimed at creating a civil war between us.
The Palestinian people who produced these results are still waiting for a new government that can achieve their dreams of freedom, independence, and a decent life.
We ask those who won to right the wrongs. We want people to obey the law. We want an end to the security breakdown. We want everything to be right. People were oppressed from all that is happening.
Regardless of the results, everyone here confirms that the Palestinian people are the real winners because they made elections successful despite all attempts to foil them, thus presenting an advanced model of Palestinian democracy as they are about to launch on a new journey to gain their national rights. Mustafa Abdelhadi, Al Alam Television, from outside the Palestinian Legislative Council, Gaza, Palestine.
The Palestinian territories embark on a new era following parliamentary elections. Parliamentary results were awaited impatiently, as one forecast poll claimed Hamas as winner, while another said that the Fatah movement was ahead. Both movements seemed confident that they would be part of the new government. U.S. President George W. Bush, however, said that even if Hamas rallied the majority of the votes, it would still be considered a terrorist organization. The latest developments with Yumna Tayyara.
Results from a knife-edge Palestinian election were expected to be announced today, with forecasts that the Islamists of Hamas had deprived the ruling Fatah party of its majority. Exit polls released today after the close of voting in the first Palestinian general election in a decade showed Hamas would make a dramatic entry into parliament. A poll by the West Bank's Birzeit University predicted Fatah had won 63 seats in the 132-seat parliament against 58 for Hamas. Another forecast by the Ramallah-based Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research said Fatah had won 42% of votes against 35% for Hamas. The Islamist faction itself claimed to have won an absolute majority, although Fatah appeared confident it would form a new government. A senior member of the Fatah campaign team and outgoing cabinet minister said his movement, which has dominated Palestinian politics for decades, was confident it had won enough votes to form the new government. Following the vote marked by the turnout of more than 77%, Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas said his people had embarked on a new era and called for international assistance to revive delayed peace talks. With the very real possibility Hamas could now at least demand a cabinet seat, Israel warned it would not do business with a group which still advocated the use of violence and refused to recognize its right to exist. In Jerusalem, Israeli acting Prime Minister Ehud Olmert said the Jewish state could not allow Hamas, responsible for dozens of suicide bombings over the past 5 years, to become part of the Palestinian Authority. The charter of Hamas calls for the destruction of the Jewish state, and the group has vowed not to disarm after entering parliament. US President George W. Bush, in turn, made it clear in a Wall Street Journal interview that the United States would continue to blacklist Hamas, regardless of the result, adding that for a political party to be viable, it should be one that acknowledged peace. Bush reaffirmed that Hamas's status in Washington's eyes as a terrorist organization would not change.
Palestinian refugees in Lebanon have followed the elections on their local televisions, hoping these elections would be a step closer towards their return to an independent Palestinian state.
Palestinians in Lebanon followed this week's crucial Palestinian elections on TV screens because they are not allowed to participate in the vote. Suhail Natour, Palestinian representative for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine to Lebanon, considered these elections as the only way that could lead to independence and to a real Palestinian sovereign state.
We think that this opportunity given to the Palestinians is another demonstration of the capacity of the Palestinians to take their responsibility as a unified people with complete dignity, to have the independence and to kick out all the occupation Israeli forces from our land, to have our independent state in Gaza and Jerusalem as capital and in the West Bank.
Abu Rabia, a Palestinian armed activist who lives in Ain al-Hilwa camp, said he watched with sadness those elections in which he was eager to participate. But Natour was on a more optimistic note, hoping the elections' results would be a step forward for the Palestinians.
We're proud of it. We like it to go to the end with good results by creating a new atmosphere in the new power in the authority. This is the first time that we have an opportunity to go have a legislative incorporating all the composition of the parties inside Palestine.
Lebanon is home to some 350,000 Palestinian refugees living in 12 camps dotted across the country. Around 70,000 of them reside in Ain al-Hilwa, the largest camp in Lebanon.
Acting Prime Minister Ehud Olmert will hold emergency consultations this evening to discuss the Hamas victory. Defence Minister Shaul Mofaz and Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni, along with the heads of the security establishment, are all set to participate. Livni also convened a special meeting of top foreign officials earlier today to assess the situation. We get more on Israeli reactions to the stunning upset from IBA's Dan Diker.
Hamas's surprise landslide victory this morning elicited shock and consternation across the Israeli political spectrum. Acting Prime Minister Ehud Olmert's bureau said today that Olmert does not trust the Palestinian leadership in which Hamas has a role. Olmert plans to meet with Defense Minister Shaul Mofaz, Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni, and senior defense officials tonight to discuss the Hamas victory. The newly appointed foreign minister held urgent consultations this afternoon with top ministry officials. Diplomatic sources in Jerusalem said that Israel would neither negotiate nor maintain contact with Hamas. Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee Chairman Yuval Steinitz and other right-wing lawmakers slammed the government's decision to allow Hamas to participate in the PA parliamentary elections. Steinitz called the results an earthquake that reflect Israel's tragic failure in its war against Hamas.
It was clear, and we said that this policy of unilateral withdrawals and giving territories without anything in return will bring the Palestinians to the conclusions that terror and violence is the right way to have achievements.
Left-wing MKs also voiced deep concern. Labour Party chief Amir Peretz today blasted Hamas as a terror organization with which he said he would not negotiate.
This is a real setback for the peace process which started in Oslo, which was based on mutual recognition. As you know, there is no mutual recognition between us and the Hamas.
The broad concern in Israel even soured the ever-optimistic Meretz Yachad chairman Yossi Beilin. Beilin said, nonetheless, he still believed an agreement between Israel and the Palestinians is possible.
The victory of Hamas is bad news for everybody who believes in peace and in negotiations. This movement is not ready to recognize Israel and to put an end to terrorism. And it is the role of Israel to stick to its national interests, which means to put an end to the occupation in the occupied territories, despite all what happened.
Dr. Eli Carmon, a top researcher at the Institute for Counterterrorism at the Herzliya Interdisciplinary Center, has gone on record in the past saying that the Palestinian parliamentary elections were the last window of opportunity for the Palestinian leadership to stop terror. IBA's Viva Press asked Carmon if he still stands by that statement given today's quiet revolution in the PA.
Could the Hamas victory serve as an opportunity to include Hamas in the peace process and draw them out of the cycle of violence?
I think that Hamas has now a huge problem, the leadership. Either they have to change their ideology and strategy, which is a huge change for them, and recognize Israel and enter through negotiations, or they'll have to continue the armed struggle, as they promised, by the way, during the last 2 days. And then it is, in my opinion, all-out war with Israel. So, first of all, the choice will be Hamas's, and then Israel will have to make its own choices.
Do you think that Israel can negotiate with Hamas?
Not with this Hamas. I think that Hamas have to change enormously. First of all, on the ideological and strategic, as I said, level, and stop the violence. It will be a long process if it will happen. And I think that perhaps there is a possibility of a split inside Hamas between the so-called moderates, who together with some Fatah leaders will try to make a change. But for the moment, I think the great victory will keep them united.
The PLO was also a terrorist organization once, and yet Israel eventually negotiated with them. Are there any parallels between these two cases?
But we remember the PLO and Arafat personally returned to violence. I heard Mahmoud Zahar speaking about the possibility of taking some territory and then continue the fight. It's exactly the stage strategy of Fatah in 1974. So this think now in terms of 1974. And practically Arafat returned to the stage strategy. So I'm a bit skeptical. I think that will be need of huge pressure on Hamas, outside pressure, and also by the Palestinians themselves, the population, which are waiting for some change. And I don't see economic and social change if there will not be a political change.
Let me ask you one final question. Is Israel responsible for the Hamas victory, as some critics are claiming? Was it a mistake for Israel to let Hamas take part in the Palestinian election?
First of all, the Fatah and Arafat's leadership and then Abu Mazen's leadership are responsible because they did not deliver the goods to the Palestinian people. Corrupted, they didn't make any reforms, and they staged violence for 5 years. And Abu Mazen had 62% of the vote in January last year, and he didn't take advantage of it. So this is the first responsibility. I think that Israel has made mistakes in its strategy. First of all, at the peak of the suicide terrorism in March, April 2002, I think that at the beginning of the defensive shield, all the Hamas leadership should have been neutralized, either arrested or killed, like it happened much later. And also, I think that the unilateral withdrawal without a real partner, a real authority who can disarm and neutralize Hamas, I think the results are now clear. I hope that now it is clear that it is not possible to do any unilateral move, although I think that we must leave most of the West Bank and clearly of Gaza, but not without clear agreement and clear authority on the territory.
The negotiations that were conducted between Chief Nuclear Negotiator Ali Larijani and the Secretary of the Russian Security Council, Igor Ivanov, led to a mutual consensus on how to resolve concerns over Iran's nuclear program within the framework of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Larijani confirmed that his country appreciates the Russian suggestion and said that turning over Iran's nuclear file to the UN Security Council does not serve the interest of the region and the world.
The negotiations between Chief Nuclear Negotiator Ali Larijani and the Secretary of the Russian Security Council Igor Ivanov strengthened the points of agreements between the partners, especially concerning the importance of resolving the Iranian nuclear program in the framework of the International Atomic Energy Agency. He said that Iran views the Russian suggestion to establish joint production of atomic fuel in Russian territories positively, and that they think this project will be discussed further in the IAEA emergency meeting in Vienna on February 2nd.
Research on uranium enrichment is different from industrial production of uranium. We agreed to conduct the research, and we will talk about the actual uranium enrichment program later.
The Iranian chief nuclear negotiator Ali Larijani clearly said that the Russian proposal did not talk about the possible Chinese role, but he welcomed such a role. Larijani strongly confirmed that the Russian-Iranian cooperation on this project is based on the mutual interests and does not violate international agreements. He also stressed resolving Iran's nuclear file in the framework of the International Atomic Energy Agency, because this would strengthen the legitimacy and the role of the agency in fulfilling its missions according to international laws. He also said that political pressure aiming to turn Iran's nuclear file to the United Nations Security Council will not serve the interests of the region and the world. He said that Iran's position towards Palestine, Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria are the reasons why Iran's nuclear file was politicized.
In politics, things are intertwined. I'm sorry to say that a technical matter was politicized. Sovereign countries are free to have their political positions and have the right to conduct technical research freely. What worries the world is the fact that superpower countries are politicizing the subject to serve their own interests.
Larijani said that his country is still willing to resume negotiations with the Europeans, but he also confirmed Iran's right to develop its peaceful nuclear technology because Iran is a member in the International Atomic Energy Agency and is committed to the agreements that were signed with the agency. The most important result of these negotiations is the reaching of positive understanding concerning the uranium enrichment program in Russia. However, there is anticipation concerning the meetings between Russian and Iranian experts scheduled to take place in mid-February to discuss the important details of this matter.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.